Yes, the battle lines have been drawn. Republicans increasingly arguing that their critics on the Democratic side of the aisle, as well as the handful or so who are joining Democrats and calling for a special prosecutor, are hypocrites. On the flip side of that, you have Democrats now suggesting that something needs to be done with a special prosecutor to get to the bottom of Russia's interference in the 2016 presidential election. There is no question that President Trump's very own decision yesterday to fire FBI Director James Comey has resulted in questions that have caught him and his confidants and his advisors completely off foot. They have no idea how to navigate this and are scrambling this morning to try to put together the pieces of how to best respond.
So is the ball really in Mr. Rosenstein's court at this point? Is it up to him to decide whether to appoint an independent counsel or not?
Ultimately, it will be up to President Trump, but I think based upon the advice of Mr. Rosenstein, as well as Attorney General Jeff Sessions, that, of course, will influence the decision. You have to remember that this all started as a result, well, it didn't all start as a result, but it was ultimately their influence with the president in order to allow him to reach that conclusion to fire Director Comey. But I think that I would point out when I spoke earlier today with Senator John Hovins, a Republican from North Dakota. This is a staunch conservative. And when I asked him about whether or not this would impact President Trump's ability to work with the Congress on various facets, he told me that President Trump's decision to fire Mr. Comey, quote unquote, raises questions that can only be answered by the Senate Intelligence Committee. So while the investigations by the FBI, by Mr. Comey, are still very much ongoing and very much will continue, the political nature of this on the Senate Intelligence Committee will definitely still continue. With the exception, David, of Senator Hovins, I would also point out that I spoke with Senator Lindsey Graham and Senator Rand Paul. These two Republicans haven't always seen eye to eye, but both of them were defending today President Trump.
So I'm glad you raised that because I do want to play a little bit of what Lindsey Graham, Senator from South Carolina, said to you just earlier on our program.
I believe the investigation will go forward. Both parties at different times have called for the dismissal of Mr. Comey. So this is not Watergate. In terms of what the Congress is going to do, I want to know all things Russia.
And Kevin, in your interview with Senator Lindsey Graham, you pointed out that Lindsey Graham has not always supported the president. So this is not somebody who blindly has gone along with the president. But on this issue, he seems to be absolutely rock solid with President Trump.
Yes, and the Republicans that I speak with aligned with Senator Graham suggest that, hey, wait a minute, Democrats just a few short months ago, including former presidential Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton, have had concerns about Director Comey. I would note, though, that I spoke with Democrats such as Senator Richard Blumenthal, who has received the wrath of President Trump's Twitter earlier this morning, and he directly drew the comparison to Watergate. He told me, David, that, quote unquote, history doesn't always repeat itself, but it rhymes. And I think that will be what we're going to be hearing more, as we just heard from the Senate Minority Leader on the floor from Chuck Schumer.
Yeah, I think
Senator
George Santayana said that first. But at the same time,
yes.
to go into the politics just a little bit here, it seems critically important that the Republicans stay with President Trump in order to make this thing go away. We have to remember that at one point, President Trump, or candidate Trump, was saying he didn't think there needed to be an investigation at all. Do the Republicans have to be concerned that if they don't go for some sort of special prosecutor, special counsel, that they'll appear to be soft on Russia?
Here's the interesting political tightrope that Republicans this morning are having to increasingly walk, and it's a very tight rope. It's stand with the president, but also at the same time raise questions about Russia's interference in the 2016 election. Just the other week, House Speaker Paul Ryan traveled overseas and spoke in the UK and criticized Vladimir Putin directly for meddling into the 2016 presidential election via cyber attacks. So he himself raising concerns. President Trump himself has criticized Vladimir Putin. But there is no question that the optics of this, of firing the individual who is leading the investigation into whether or not there was any type of collusion involved, sends a signal that is not something that Republicans want to be grappling with, particularly when they're having to grapple with so many other hosts of policy issues such as health care. This White House can't repeal anything of Obamacare unless they can work with the much more moderate senators in the Republican Party in the Senate. And that will be the test, is whether or not he's diminished his political capital and can't recover.